You put a $1,600 car repair on your credit card. Not because you're broke. Not because you can't afford it. Just because it's easier. Use the card, get the points, pay it off when the bill hits your inbox. So you do exactly that. You wait for the statement. You pay the balance in full. On time. No late fees. No interest. You did everything right. And then your credit score drops. That's not just annoying. It's confusing. You checked all the boxes. Paid in full. Paid on time. No carried debt. So why does the system act like you suddenly became risky? The answer is simple. Your credit score wasn't reacting to when you paid. It was reacting to what got reported. And those two things are not always the same. That's the trap almost nobody explains clearly. Most people think credit scores mainly measure responsibility. And while that's part of it, a lot of the time, they also measure timing. There's one date that matters way more than most people realize. Miss it by just a day or two, and you can look risky to the algorithm, even when you did everything right. This isn't a story about irresponsibility. It's a story about hidden rules. And that's why so many people feel like personal finance advice is incomplete. The advice says pay on time. It says pay in full. It says be responsible. All of that is still good advice. But what it usually doesn't explain is that the system has more than one scoreboard. One scoreboard cares if you were late. Another cares what balance got reported. Another cares how much of your limit you appeared to be using. So you can do everything that feels responsible in real life and still look worse on paper. That's what we're breaking down today. No fake guru talk. No fantasy fixes. No nonsense. Just the hidden rule that catches a huge number of normal people and exactly what you can do about it. And stay to the end. There's one mistake people make trying to optimize this that can get their account flagged, reviewed, or just make them look riskier than they really are. First, let's get one thing straight. Your credit score is not watching your life in real time. It's not following your bank account live. It's not watching you move money the second you transfer it. It's not checking if you have cash sitting in your checking account. It's not saying, great, this person paid everything off yesterday. It works much more like a snapshot, a delayed snapshot. And for a lot of people, that snapshot gets taken at the worst possible time. Not when your balance is cleaned up, not after payday, not after you paid the bill in full. It often gets taken when your statement closes. That's the hidden date, not the due date. The statement closing date. Once you understand that, the whole thing starts making a lot more sense. Still annoying. Still unfair. But at least it makes sense. Let's break it down simply. Say your billing cycle runs from the 1st to the 30th. During that month, you use your card like normal. Gas, groceries, streaming subscriptions, dinner, that $1,600 car repair, maybe a few smaller purchases on top. Your balance goes up during the month. Then the statement closes on the 30th. If that statement shows a $1,600 balance, that's likely the number your card issuer reports to the credit bureaus. Not what you pay 10 days later. Not what you pay 2 weeks later. Not what your balance becomes after you clean everything up. That statement balance is often the snapshot. So even if you pay the full $1,600 on the 10th of the next month, that earlier reported number may still be what the system sees until the next cycle updates. That's where people get blindsided. In real life, you paid it. In the system, you still looked heavily used. And your score reacts to the report, not to your intentions, not to the fact that you were responsible, not to the fact that you never paid interest, not to the fact that the money was already sitting in your account. This is where credit utilization comes in. Credit utilization is simply how much of your available credit you're using. If your card limit is $4,000 and the reported balance is $1,600, that card is showing 40% utilization. And that matters a lot because the scoring system tends to interpret high utilization as stress. Not always fairly, not always accurately, but statistically, that's how the system thinks. It's not asking, can this person actually afford this? It's asking, how close does this person appear to be to the edge? The higher that reported percentage is, the worse you can look. That's why this topic matters so much. Utilization can move your score much faster than people expect. A missed payment is a deeper scar. It can haunt you for years. Utilization is different. It's much more about what you look like right now. That's the good news. Because if the problem is the snapshot, the fix isn't necessarily years of rebuilding. Sometimes, it's just understanding the timing. Here's the rule of thumb. Once you get above 30% utilization, things can start looking worse. Below 10% usually looks much healthier. And if you're optimizing for every possible point before a mortgage or auto loan application, you'll often try to report even lower than that. That's why one badly timed balance can hurt more than you expect. Not because you're broke, not because you made a terrible decision, but because you accidentally reported the worst moment of your month. And this is why so many people feel like the system is rigged. The surface-level advice sounds simple. Pay on time, pay in full, be responsible. Again, that's good advice. But if nobody explains the difference between the due date and the statement closing date, you end up thinking you failed some mysterious financial test. You didn't. You just didn't know which date controlled the photo. That's really what this is, photo day. The statement closing date is photo day. If your room is messy on photo day, that's the picture that gets saved. It doesn't matter that you clean it 2 days later. The messy photo is the one that got captured. That's how a lot of people get punished by utilization. So what's the fix? It's simpler than most people think. If you want the bureaus to see a lower balance, pay before your statement closes, not just before the due date. That's the move. Not after the bill arrives. Before the bill gets generated. So if your statement closes on the 30th and your balance is high, make a payment a few days before that closing date. That way, when the statement is created, it shows a smaller balance. And that smaller balance is what often gets reported. Instead of the bureaus seeing $1,600, they might only see $20, $10, or some other tiny amount. Same spending, different timing, different snapshot, different result. Now let's talk about the 48 hours part. This isn't some magical number with mystical powers. The reason 48 hours matters is operational. Payments don't always post instantly. Sometimes they take time to clear. Sometimes systems update overnight. Sometimes a weekend gets in the way. Sometimes your bank and your card issuer aren't syncing as fast as you think. So if your statement closes on the 15th, paying on the 15th can already be too late. Paying 1 or 2 days earlier gives the system time to reflect the lower balance before the snapshot is taken. This is less of a hack and more of a timing adjustment. You're not tricking the bank. You're making sure the right number is visible before the snapshot gets captured. Let's make this concrete. Say your statement closes on the 15th. On the 12th or 13th, you check your card and see a $620 balance. You want the bureaus to see about $20. So you make a $600 payment before the statement closes. Now, when the 15th comes, the statement may generate showing only $20. That $20 is the number the bureaus may receive. Then, before the due date, you pay off the final $20. Result: you showed low utilization, paid no interest, and your report looked much cleaner. That's the logic. No hype, no magic, just knowing which number gets photographed. But now let's talk about a common overcorrection. A lot of people hear this and think, okay, then I should make every single card report 0. Sounds logical, but credit scoring likes making simple things weird. Reporting 0 on every single card all the time isn't always the absolute best look either. Credit scoring models generally prefer to see some responsible usage, not all 0 activity forever. That means there's a difference between carrying expensive debt, reporting a high balance, and allowing a tiny balance to report before paying it off by the due date. Those are not the same thing. Let me make this very clear. Reporting a balance is not the same thing as paying interest. If your statement closes with a tiny balance, that balance may get reported. But if you pay that statement balance by the due date, you can still avoid interest completely. Yes, it's possible to show activity without carrying costly debt. That's the sweet spot a lot of people are aiming for. If you just want a healthy credit profile, you don't need to obsess over perfection. For most people, the biggest wins come from doing 3 things. Keep utilization low, don't let a high balance report, and pay on time every month. That alone solves a huge amount of the problem. Now let's talk about another place people get tripped up: autopay. Autopay is great for avoiding late payments. It's not designed to optimize your reported utilization, and that distinction matters. If your autopay is set to pay the statement balance on the due date, that may save you from interest and late fees. Great. But it doesn't solve the earlier reporting problem. By the time the due date arrives, the statement may have already closed with a high balance. So if you want to control the snapshot, you usually have to step in manually before the statement closing date. Autopay protects you from one kind of mistake. It doesn't optimize every variable. That means the practical version of this strategy is simple. 1. Find your statement closing date. 2. Set a reminder 2 to 3 days before it. 3. Check the balance. 4. If it's higher than you want reported, pay it down before the statement cuts. 5. Then pay the remaining statement balance by the due date. That's really the whole game. And if you have multiple cards, you don't need to become obsessive and micromanage every one of them every single month. For most people, the best use case for this is when you know your score matters more than usual. Maybe you're applying for a mortgage soon, getting ready for an auto loan, or know a lender is about to look at your report. That's when timing becomes especially valuable. The rest of the time, keeping utilization reasonably low is usually enough. Now here's the mistake people make when they get too aggressive with this. Credit cycling. That's when you max out a low-limit card, pay it down, spend again, pay it down again, and keep doing that over and over in the same billing cycle. For example, if your card limit is $1,000, but you push $3,000 of spending through it in 1 month by constantly paying it down and reusing it, you may think you're being efficient. The bank may not see it that way. To a risk department, that can look abnormal. Sometimes it can raise fraud concerns. Sometimes it can trigger a review. Sometimes it can simply make you look riskier than you really are. So there's a difference between paying down your balance before the statement closes and repeatedly cycling a low-limit card far beyond what the issuer expected. One is normal optimization. The other can get you unwanted attention. If you keep running into this problem because your limit is too small, the better fix may be asking for a credit limit increase instead of constantly trying to outmaneuver the calendar. Because bigger limits make utilization much easier to manage naturally. If you have a $20,000 limit, a $2,000 balance is only 10%. Much easier, much cleaner, much less drama. Now let's add one more defensive tip. A lot of people think closing old and used cards will clean up their finances. But from a utilization standpoint, that can backfire. If you close a card with a high limit and zero balance, your total available credit drops. That means your utilization percentage can go up even if your spending stays exactly the same. So unless there's a real reason to close the card, keeping old accounts open can actually help your profile, especially if they increase your total available credit and lower your overall utilization. And this is why I like topics like this. Because this is the real texture of modern money. Not fake luxury motivation, not rented supercars, not buy my course nonsense. Just hidden rules. The kind that make ordinary people feel like they're messing up, when really they were never properly taught how the system works. A lot of financial stress isn't just about income. It's also about friction, lag, timing, opaque systems, delayed reporting, invisible scoreboards. And when you finally understand that, you stop blaming yourself every single time something confusing happens. Sometimes the problem isn't that you were irresponsible. Sometimes the problem is that the system scored a snapshot instead of your real life. Let's recap and make this usable. If your score dropped even though you paid in full and on time, that doesn't automatically mean you did something wrong. It may simply mean your balance was reported before your payment was reflected. The due date helps you avoid interest and late fees. The statement closing date often shapes what the bureaus see. So the practical move is simple. Find your statement closing date, not just your due date. Set a reminder 2 to 3 days before it. Check the balance before the statement cuts. If it's too high, pay it down early. Then pay the remaining statement balance by the due date to avoid interest. That's the difference between managing your money in real life and managing how the system sees your money on paper. And in this world, both matter. Try this with one card this month. Not all of them, just one. Find the closing date, watch the balance a few days before it, manage the snapshot, then see what changes. If you've ever paid on time and still watched your score drop, comment "snapshot trap" below. Let's see how many of us have been burned by this. And if you test this month, come back and tell me what changed. Did your score move? Or did you realize your statement closing date was the real problem all along? If this helped, subscribe for more breakdowns of the hidden financial rules that keep ordinary people from getting ahead. No fluff, no hype, just clear, actionable explanations of how the system actually works. This channel is for education and commentary only, not financial advice. Financial decisions involve risk. Always do your own research. This channel uses AI tools for voiceover and visual rendering, but every video is originally researched, scripted, structured, and edited through a human-led process. The goal is simple: make complex money realities easier to see, understand, and question.